Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another inspiring interview with another inspiring individual. And today I'm not talking to a coach, well, at least not coach per se, but I'm sure Taran is doing a lot of coaching with his team at his work. But today I'm so excited, really. I'm talking to a former colleague of mine, Taran Singh. Taran, very warm welcome. Hi.
Thank you. Thank you.
Taran
Thank you.
is
Thank you, Michaela, for having me.
Thank you very much for jumping on. And before we start, I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction. So Taran is talking to me from Dubai. We were actually trying to figure out where did we meet first time before we started recording. We didn't figure it out. We think it was in Singapore, but might have been somewhere else. And Taran is a senior director of revenue management, currently based in Dubai, working from Dubai. And we are former colleagues, as I said. So we worked together in my previous company before I became the coach. So we've known of each other for a very, very long time. And why I asked Taran to come and have this interview with me is because I saw Taran's post on LinkedIn about talking about the book of his friend. I've got the title in here. The book is called She is Remarkable. And it's from your friend Yasmin Kaur.
Yes.
And it's a collection of stories about women and about basically the remarkable women are talking about what they are going through. And in that post, you were talking about mental health. And this was really, really exciting. And I saw it had a lot of response. That post had a lot of response from a lot of people. And I thought it was absolutely beautiful to hear, first of all, men talking about mental health, and secondly, a man in a very high corporate position talking about mental health. And then, so I reached out to Taran and I said, would you please have an interview with me? And he said, yes. So here we are. So once again, thank you so very much, Taran. And I'm going to start, first of all, what made you post that post? What was the kind of a nudge for you to do that?
So I think, frankly, when I just wrote it, it was more to kind of compliment, my friend, and acknowledge the fact that there are all these ladies who have kind of written their life stories in that book. And as you read that book, you will find that something was common, and those common things were their own struggles. Quite a few of them talked about mental health and wellness, stigma, how to break that stigma. Like Jasmine, one of my friend, she's talked about how she was trying to move out of those barriers, and especially when you are in India, right? There's so much of those barriers around how people perceive a female versus a male in a family, in the society, and how she had broken all of those barriers to do what she did and where she is. So I think I was acknowledging that, but then I remember the second paragraph when I was writing that post did kind of hint towards that mental wealth, because that was the common theme that I read a couple of stories initially. And I was like, people are talking about that and ladies are talking about that. And I thought, yeah, I mean, I've had maybe my share of mental wellness that I would want to put across, but I never had an opportunity, or let's say courage, let me be very frank about talking about that subject openly. So yeah, that was just an opportunity for me to just acknowledge and compliment all the ladies out there who did that in a beautiful way. And that book is really good. I mean, She's Remarkable. It's one of the very nice books that I've read in the recent times. Very inspiring.
Thank you very much. So you said you found courage to start talking about it. So when you posted that post out there, how did you feel when you saw all those reactions that were coming? How did you feel?
I mean, it was encouraging at one side of the parameter, if you measure. But I also relate to the fact that you post sometimes a lot of things and you don't get those likes or hits and views. And there's a reason, because people sometimes don't relate to that. But if people are sometimes liking or sharing what I've written, or anything around the subject, for example, I would say people relate to it. right? That's the bottom line on why you like something on social media and why you don't like on social media. You don't have to just click it just because Tarandeep has put it across something, or my colleagues or my team members will like everything that I put on LinkedIn or Instagram. um, so I think somewhere I also felt, and this is again my feeling, that people relate to it, which means every one of us today in this fast moving corporate world especially are going through our own personal journey of mental health, stress, anxiety, but we don't know what we don't know.
Mhm.
We don't talk about that subject. We don't know whom to talk to be very frank.
Mhm.
Um, and the whole stigma around that, oh, what will people perceive if I talk about it? So I think when I saw that it is getting that momentum, I could feel that people relate to it, but it is the same people, the same audience of mine, the same network of mine, which is also maybe hesitant to talk about it. And as I said, the reasons are the same. They don't know where to go and they don't know what they don't know.
Mhm. Yeah, I spoke yesterday with a friend of mine about, being courageous. And it does take courage to put something out there, because you're putting yourself out there, your opinion. You just don't know how it's going to land. But if somebody does not take that courage to do that, there might be a lot of stuff unsaid. And by
Absolutely.
us talking about it, and for me, it's the same, because I'm putting, over the last year or so, myself out there to social media a lot, really sharing openly what I'm going through, what's been happening in my life. But it's really giving people permission just to relate to one another as human
Yeah,
being to a human being, because we all go through the same stuff, whether it's in the
absolutely.
corporate world, whether it's outside, whether it's business owners, it's
Yeah, yeah,
all of
yeah.
us. And
Absolutely.
so really, from my side, thank you so very much for bringing it out there. It was really, really encouraging. So what does mental health mean to you? How would you define that for yourself?
Uh, if you would have asked me this question maybe a year ago, I would have said, what mental health? Why are you asking me this question? Right? But
And why would be a reaction like that a year ago?
because again, said, I mean, it's a stigma, right? It is like if you're asking me the question, oh, do you think I have an issue? I have a mental issue. I know why is this question being put across to me?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the fact that self-awareness that I don't think I have an issue, so why are you even asking me this question? It's that's the mindset. But as I said, right, in the last year or so in my journey so far, when I started kind of going through reading about it, understanding about it, I spoke to a personal coach, which she really helped me to kind of navigate through this journey of mine. And I think at a personal level, mental health for me now today refers to an overall psychological well-being,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, it it goes beyond how I feel, how I think, what I think or overthink at times, and I think how I behave as well, and affect my it can affect my ability to function in my daily life, to be very frank. So, a good mental health for me will mean that I'm able to cope up with the daily stresses of life. And as you said, right, it can be corporate, it can be private, it can be personal, family, friends, society, whatever. But a good mental health will help me cope up with those stresses of life. To me, it also means a lot to maintain a healthy relationship
Mm-hmm.
with my wife, with my daughter, with my parents, family members, um, my peers, my friends, my colleagues in the office, and my God, and society in general, that perceives you and um makes assumptions around you in terms of how you behave and what you do and what you don't do. And most importantly, to say just having a very positive outlook in life. I think that's what good mental health is all about for me. I mean, I can talk the same thing from a negative side and say, oh, what is a poor mental health, and everything will go into those same words but in the negative section. But that's what my goal is: positive outlook, maintain very healthy and positive relationships, and be having a feeling of mindfulness and fulfillment
Mhm.
in whatever you have.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm no more running after something now, to be very frank, right? Whatever has happened, whatever is happening, whatever will happen for a good, for a purpose.
Mhm.
And you, some things which are not in your control, there is no point going round and round about it, right? There's no point, going into and into a shell, or going into a zone where you are like, why this is happening with me?
Mhm.
But if it is happening and you don't have a control, I think we can do things around what we can control to make the most out of it.
Mhm.
So I think with that positive outlook, if someone can live the life, that's what positive mental health is for me.
Mhm. Well, you've said a few really important things in there. So what I'm hearing in there is control what you can,
Yeah.
which that's very often is our big thing, because as human beings, our brain just loves controlling things, right? And just being really, really clinging to the outcomes to be a certain way. And that's why every time we say this should be this way or this should be that way, we are really harming ourselves, because those expectations of things should be a certain way are just really self-harming. But controlling what we can and just letting go of what we can't is a huge release to our well-being as such. Then what I'm hearing, what the other thing that you've mentioned is gratitude. Like really having, a gratitude and being mindful, present to those
Yeah.
things that we have and that are here with us. And not, this became a little bit, gratitude is such a thing we talk about a lot. And I think it just became a little bit of a buzzword, one of the buzzwords, be grateful, be grateful.
Yeah.
But really, as a practice, as a well-being practice, really feeling that gratitude in the body. And I love what you just did, like the gesture on your body, really feeling from the place of heart or from the place of your inner being, that gratefulness, that gratitude towards things, not just saying that or not just writing that on a piece of paper, but just really sitting with it mindfully is extremely important. So what I'm hearing, there is a lot of self-awareness around what works for you and what serves you. How do you find the importance of self-awareness, and how self-aware do you think we are as individuals? Are we really self-aware?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think you will be considered a guru if, or any one of us who can get into that complete self-awareness zone. Um, but yeah, it's a tough exercise, to be very frank. But if you ask me what role does it play, I mean, it does play a very, very important role. I think it's very, very important. It is the starting point of the or the first step of the journey, right? If you want to really go towards uh, mindfulness and mental wellness and awareness, that is the first step. Because for me, what is self-awareness? It is our ability to reflect on our own self, right? On our own thoughts, our feelings, our behaviors, and understand on how they impact you and others, right? It's kind of linked to both the sides, because what you do impacts you and it impacts others, right? So if you get into that shallow, why is it happening with me? Somewhere inside it's happening, something is impacting you, right? And there are scientifically proven, um, medically proven now, things around that stress leads to cholesterol, for example, right? I mean, I've had high cholesterol, and I know a common point of that for me, a reason can be stress, because I'm doing everything else in terms of my nutrition, running, exercise, all that stuff. But why does the cholesterol doesn't go down? Because there's this whole stress that kind of is there. So what you're doing to yourself, that awareness, but also the fact that what you are doing, how is it impacting others? So I think that's a critical part of self-awareness. It can also help you understand your own emotions, how your body reacts to a lot of things. It If you can get the self-awareness and the control of your body and your mind, and you can also develop a mechanism to kind of cope up with all of that, to manage your stress and manage all the other challenges of life. And I can give you a simple example. Back in my Singapore days, I never used to go for a run, and I was never really a physically active person. um, you know um, uh, back in Singapore, everybody goes for a run, right? People are always running around, and health is really taken very positively in that country. And I started running in Singapore, and my majority of the runs used to be out on the road. And I used to go to the East Coast Park and in towards the beach from my place, doing my 8 kilometers, 10 kilometers run every time. But I was running on a concrete surface at the end of the day. I was running on the road, and over a period of time, I started getting pain in my ankle and my knees. Now, I could have chosen to ignore that, but it is also a self-awareness, right? It is also being self-awareness. Okay, there's a problem. You have to then go to a doctor. You have to talk to someone. You have to maybe go for a physiotherapy, and take the right advice. And the right advice is, okay, do not go for long runs. Do not do it on a daily basis. Maybe do some mix and match of exercises, and maybe if you have to run on a padded surface. Now, put all of that in terms of mental health or in terms of self-awareness around mental health, right? As physical features or physical nature of our body, I think we are very much self-aware. Something slightly goes wrong in your physical part of the body, we immediately go to a doctor, to somebody to take advice. But on the mental health side of things, we are just unaware. We just don't know. And because we don't know, we don't even catch the young signs of what is going wrong. The body is telling you, the mind is telling you, uh, everything is, it is in front of you, but you can't catch those signs because you don't know what you don't know. You don't know. You might be feeling that feeling of anxiety or stress, but you don't know. It again is such a buzzword, right? Stress, but you need to know what is stress and are you really taking that stress, right? And then the worst part is if you don't catch those signs early, it can really lead to some really, not so good things in life. You can go into depression, you can go into addiction as well. And even addiction, right? I mean, just a couple of weeks back, I always thought addiction means addiction of drugs, addiction of drinking, smoking. And I don't do that. And in my last mental wellness camp that I attended just a couple of weeks back in February, I was in that zone where my eyes were closed, and we were given a small thread, and the facilitator was asking questions. And if some things were not going right in your life, you were to tie a knot. And when I was sitting in that zone, the question was, do you have an addiction? And I was like, oh, great. That's a great question. I don't have any addiction, because my mind said addiction of drugs, smoking, and drinking. And I don't do anything of that. But then she took a pause and she said, addiction of work, addiction of emails, addiction of being on the screen, addiction of being on social media. And I was like, okay, that's one knot. That's one more knot. That's one more knot. So I think that's what self-awareness is all about. It just helps you put together all of those perspectives together. And sometimes it's just good to talk to some specialist and get the right insights which can help you.
Yeah, and I think that's addiction is such a big topic. And as you say, because it's such a scary word, it's a complete taboo. It's like, it's not me by any stretch of imagination. But as you say, there are so many different kinds of addictions. There are addictions like addictions like you mentioned, work. It might be shopping. It might be addiction to love. Just really kind of looking for the dopamine, being loved, because maybe we don't know how to experience love, or we didn't learn in our childhood how to experience love. So that self-awareness and just kind of a willingness maybe to open the door to start exploring and having conversations with different people just really broadens up horizon on what's going on out there and with us. But what you've mentioned something that I want to touch on. You mentioned the word purpose as one thing, but also you mentioned being mindful of how things work for you and also how you impact others. And I think, that's a big thing, because very often we think about us. Okay, how do I take care of me? How do I function? But then we're going into things like, gratitude, like purpose. And in those kind of topics, we are really looking at, it's just not just about me, it's about the other. It's about how I relate to the other, how I impact the other, how I talk to the other. And this is where the mental well-being as well, or well-being, you know, in general, is critical, because our connection with others is a huge part of our well-being. How do you see that kind of, as well, service, you know, serving other, just maybe just having a kind word, or maybe just, you know, just really honestly, sincerely asking, how are you doing? Not just because, you know, how are you doing, just as in passing. So what is in your mind, what is in your opinion, what is the importance of connection and service to the others from the place of self-awareness and well-being?
I frankly, you know, we are all social animals, right? This is being social distinguishes us and the wild animal, right? Frankly, I mean, this is who we are. Me, myself, alone as a physical body is nothing. You know, who am I? I'm part of a family. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm a son. I'm a brother. I'm a colleague. I'm a teammate. This is all the tags that we carry. And for us, we have to give and make the most of those tags, right? If I'm living my own, I'm not living on an island. I'm living on this planet with, you know, in a society where whatever I do, and again, it goes back to maybe by the same spirituality piece that we talked about earlier, right? For me, it's again part of my religion. You know, my religion it talks a lot about giving, right? Giving with and the gratitude part is a very strong nucleus for my religion and for myself. So it's all about making sure that even if it's being self-aware, how can I make sure that I can help others as well in that journey, right? I mean, at the end of the day, and again, giving you a simple example, right? I lead a team of team members, and if I can help someone to bridge the same journey that I have maybe possibly gone through for whatever reasons, right? There are a lot of people, team members or friends sometimes that I talk to who are going through their personal stress, right? If I can help someone, and not that I'm the coach or I'm a doctor to kind of do that, but if I can just put a few things which helps to get the other person self-aware and realize that there is a problem and maybe he or she needs help, I think that will be the best thing that I can do for that person. Because the last thing I want to see my friend or my family member is to go through that extreme and in a zone where it is very difficult to get him or her back. So if I can help that friend much earlier or a colleague much earlier, I think I will be doing a lot of justice to my own self and to the society and to my relationship with that person. Whether that relationship is of that family member or as a friend, that's what it's all about. If I can't tell my friend that something is wrong with you, who else will? Right? We talk about taking that self-awareness or self-responsibility from an individual point of view. But if I'm not going to take the responsibility, who will?
Yeah.
So that's what I feel about that relationship part and being that self-awareness.
Big one. And you just mentioned the word spirituality. You mentioned the word God. So I am deeply spiritual, have been on my spiritual journey for about 10 years now. Reason being that my mental health was really, really suffering. I went through massive anxiety. So I think many people know my story by now. And I suffered with those anxieties for about 6 years, like really, really, really bad. And nobody knew about them. Over-delivering, overachieving, you know, going strong. And inside I was just a nervous, complete wreck, until one day I just could not, you know, function anymore. Literally, physically, my body was just like, nah, we're not going to be doing this, girl, anymore. This is when I started looking for my first coach. And this is when I started opening up to something bigger and starting doing the work from inside out, instead of just looking, okay, what do I have to do out there to make me feel better? And this is where I started connecting with maybe the higher purpose. For me, it's universe. You mentioned the word God. Obviously, we all have got different kind of connections. So what does spirituality mean to you? How important is it in your life? What does it bring to your life? Tell us a little bit about that.
That's it, right? For me, it's the God, right? I mean, that's the basic answer you might get with 99% of the Indians that you might talk to, and we have so many gods back in our country with different religions. So I think that's the first generic answer that you will get, that okay, it's my connection to the God. And I always thought that as well, that it's all about spirituality. For me, is just that connecting with that God. And I haven't seen the God. So what is God, right? And then, as I shared, right, in my last 1.5 year in Dubai now, obviously I've been here now for almost 6 years, but last 1.5 years, I've started to kind of, visit on my weekends, group of our members from our religion, and we kind of sit together and do prayers and discuss what God says in our holy book and what's the purpose of life and things like that. And I think that really helped me to understand my religion better, my connect with the God better. And as I was earlier mentioning, right, in your last question, it's about getting that self-awareness and that feeling of gratitude. I would say these were all theoretical concepts for me, that my parents told me that, oh, you should always be in gratitude with the God and things like that. But one bad incident in life, and you are like, why is God doing this to you? Right? In the same breath, all this education goes for a toss with one bad incident that happens in your life, and you feel, why is God doing this to you? But now, and maybe somewhere I still have that feeling, but because I said I'm on a journey, right? I am not the perfect guru. But now the only peace that I make with is, it's happening and I don't have a control, and whatever is happening for a purpose. Maybe I need to learn something out of it, right? In a corporate world, your organization might say, okay, you should take risks. Okay, you will fail, but you will learn out of that, right? A very typical leadership discussion you will have around it. But put that in the same spiritual world and in your own life cycle, in your own journey. I think it's all about, you connect with God. You can't question God. You're talking to a power, a supreme power. So there is no point questioning it. You can't question what the God is doing or what that superpower is doing. So that's why it's about getting that self-awareness to say, whatever is happening with that purpose, gratitude again. I suffered a loss of $10,000 in stock market. Just an example. You can blame, or you can say, oh, God saved me at the right time. And just two different sides of looking at what the purpose of life is all about. You can keep getting into that shell of, I've lost $10,000 in stock market, or you can say, I moved out quickly. Right? And I think that's what, for me, that's what spirituality is all about, to just connect with that supreme power, get that experience, and understanding my own self. As I said earlier, right? For me, the God is inside out. It is inside us and it is outside us. In our religion, we say God is in everyone. In every human being and form, there is God. But to connect with Michaela, yes, I need to connect with you, but I also need to connect with my inner self. So this journey of mine is kind of all about connecting with who I am, knowing who I am, understanding, controlling my breath, my emotions, on which I don't have control. Imagine if we can control that. Imagine if we can get an understanding of what those emotions are. How do I react to things, right? When I was reacting to my daughter when she was 3 years old was very different to how I react to things as a 13-year-old. Because it's a journey. I've learned that over a period of time, I never had a daughter before, so I know how to manage my daughter in that journey. But that's all about learning for your own self as well. I think that's what spirituality to me is all about. Getting into that zone, understanding you, feeling that connect with that supreme power.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah, we could be talking about this for a very long time. And what I'm hearing once again in here, it's trust. It's trust in that whether it's God for somebody, whether it's universe, whether it's energy, whether it's source, whether it's purpose, whether it's whatever it is, it's trusting that things are happening for a reason.
Yes.
And it's not difficult to be trust in things when things are going right.
Yeah.
But when things, in our perception, when things are not going as they should be, once again, we're talking about, this is when really reconnecting with, okay, what is this here to teach me? And I love that you said the question why. The questions why are the most emotionally charged questions. The worst questions we can ask ourselves, because then we fall into the place of victimhood. Why is this happening to me? Why am I going? Why is my husband like that? Why is my boss like that? That's just the victimhood there, and there is just it's a rabbit hole where we're not going to get out. But open asking the questions like you ask, what is this here to teach me?
Yeah.
And just kind of, taking a step back and trusting that this is happening for something greater. And very often we do look at it, right? Like very often something happens to us, and then maybe it might take a few weeks, few months, sometimes few years, but then you look back and you say, it was the best thing that has ever happened to me.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, when I left Singapore, I was like, "Oh, why am I leaving Singapore?" My wife left the job, and she was like, "Why am I leaving Singapore?" And she never, it was very difficult for her to get a job when she moved to Dubai with me, and she's still technically without an official job, even though she started some of her own stuff. But we can keep complaining about it. But now I look at the flip side that, my daughter was going through that teenage phase. And the fact that my wife was always at home for her, that she comes back home at 4 o'clock and from school, and she's got an hour to discuss with her mother what went wrong in school, what was right in school. As a parent, as a mother and daughter connect, I see that bond today, which back in Singapore, both of us working, and practically the nanny was taking care of her. So, that's the positive that we've taken out of those 5 years, that yes, you did not get a job and there was a purpose. And the purpose is that we've been able to give the right upbringing to our daughter. And she's been able, she's been the pillar of our family, that she's been able to do that for our daughter and for me as well. She's the core pillar for that. And I would have never done that without her. So that's the positive out of life that you can see.
Yeah, beautiful. When we're talking about spirituality, what's your view on intuition and using your intuition? You're a revenue man. It's data.
Yes.
What is your view on intuition?
Yes, we are data, but we always say, use your intuition, use your gut feel, right? So that gut feel has to kind of come in, which obviously comes in from your experience as well to a large extent, right?
And from
I
that
think
trust
intuition,
as well, doesn't it?
absolutely. It's about trusting you, right? Trusting your own experience, trusting what you're hearing, what you're listening, what you are seeing. So that is what intuition is all about. Intuition is nothing else but what your mind is telling you, what your heart is telling you at the same time. Yes, you can trust your data and your numbers, but yes, practically there is a very big play of intuition in my personal life as well as in my professional life. I mean, in personal life, I take a lot of decisions for which you sometimes don't have the data, right? And we look at revenue management, and yes, there is a lot of data, but in a personal life, as a parent, as a son, as a father, as a friend or a family member, you take a lot of decisions which you take at the instinct of something that comes strongly inside you. That, oh, I have to do this, right? And when that feeling comes in, sometimes you measure that. Sometimes you don't measure that. Sometimes you just go with the flow and say, okay, we have to do this. And sometimes you're like, okay, this is a very strong intuition. Let's put all our cards on the table and kind of measure the impact of that, especially when a lot is at stake, right? So yeah, I go with the intuition. I feel everybody should, because somewhere I feel your heart is talking to you, your mind is talking to you, and they will never be wrong. Both your heart and mind, they will never be wrong, because it is your inner voice at the end of the day. So trust it, learn to trust it, and I think there will be much more positives to explore out of that.
And that's another act of courage, isn't it? Because we are so logic driven very often that,
Yeah,
and we all have intuition, every single one of us. It's just, again, in that all that noise that's going on, in that busyness, we very often do not hear those subtle kind of signs, even though intuition is talking to every single one of us all the time. And
yeah,
when you're talking about heart, and as you mentioned before as well, this is all new, scientifically proven, all this stuff now. Like our heart has got 40,000 neurons, the same as our mind. So our heart, from the neuroscience point of view, is equally as strong decision center as mind. It's just
absolutely.
because we get so stuck in our thoughts and in our overthinking that we don't connect with our heart, and we don't
Okay.
hear what the heart is saying.
Yeah, yeah,
But from the science, it's all measurable these days. Just if we connect with our heart, the decisions will be made much, much sounder.
very true,
Yeah.
very true.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, Taran, so beautiful. I am so, so grateful for this conversation. You know what is beautiful when I now coach people? So now I'm not in corporate world, I'm on the other side. And I've had many coaches in my life that really, really helped me. And that's why I became, a coach myself, because I just saw purpose in that for me, just helping people. And what is beautiful, because I do coach people from corporate world and the business owners. And when people come and get that opportunity to be in the safe environment, and I work with men and women, so it doesn't really matter whether it's a man or a woman. And I work with people all over the world because of my background, obviously. So it does not matter where we are, what nationality, what race, or what gender, where we were born. We are all the same. All the
Absolutely.
same. And when we do take that opportunity to kind of have that safe space container, because it can be daunting to start with, as you said yourself, you did not want to because you found it as a stigma to start with. But when you do take that time for yourself and you start discovering, it's like a treasure box, isn't it? You start learning about yourself, things that and as you said again before, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And then
True.
if you don't know, you can't do anything about it. But if you do take the time and start exploring, okay, who am I actually? Things will start unraveling beautifully. And it's a journey of transformation that never ends.
Absolutely. And I think, the coach, whether, you as an individual, as a coach, or anybody, and that circle of trust, which can be with any person, right? I mean, a coach definitely helps because it's a third party person, doesn't have any, history with you, kind of helps. I still remember the first time I sat um, with someone, and she did not talk much. And after the first sitting, I felt that, I mean, what was this? I was doing all the talking. But then when I understood the fact that I was feeling so relieved, the fact that somebody listened to me, Michaela, it's not easy to listen to someone. Listening is our biggest challenge today in personal and professional lives. If you can get someone who can listen to you, empathize with you, not sympathize, empathize with you, I think that's the greatest gift that you can get on that day. And you should stand up and give that person a big hug, because nobody listens. People don't have time. Families, within families, my daughter, as I said, right, she's 13 years old. She comes back from school. She's busy with her homework. Door is 90% of the times door is closed. Sometimes I go and meet her and leave the door open. And then suddenly I'm in my room and I hear the door getting, as if I left the door open. Why? Um, Nobody's got time. Within families, people don't have time to listen, to sit down, to talk to each other. And I'll share with you, as I was saying, in that last camp that I attended, we were in a sharing circle. I think 15, 16 of us. Don't know who people are, right? Maybe I have some couple of familiar faces, maybe, but I don't know most of them. And when we started that whole sharing circle and we started sharing our personal experiences, believe you in me, tears rolled down. It was so, it was a feeling of bit of, there was a bit of, I was a bit uneasy over there, but The fact that people were opening out actually helped me to ease out as well. But you realize there is so much of pain in life. And that's again the feeling of gratitude that kind of comes in. Oh, what is happening with me? It's nothing. There is so much of pain out there. And that social circle, that social sharing that was happening, it was all it was happening was that somebody was talking and there were 14 others who were just listening without judging the person, right? And it's all about that listening, that understanding, listening to someone. And we just don't get that today. A coach helps you connect to that bridge, which is very, very important.
Yeah, listening is a huge skill. And once again, like with self-awareness, we think we are really good listeners. We're just not. Most of the time, what we do, we listen to answer, or we listen to be right, or we listen just to say the next thing that we want to say. And instead of actually listening to understand.
Absolutely.
And connect. And very often in coaching, as you say, because my first experience with coaching was exactly the same when I started 10 years ago. Like I came to my first session and she didn't say anything, and I was there, and exactly the same experience. Like, why am I paying for this? Like what's going on? And then once you start unraveling, then you start understanding the process. But listening is a huge, huge, huge thing. Taran, thank you so very much. Is there anything that you would like to leave our audience with before we wrap up? Anything else that is sitting there? I think we could do the series out of this. Don't worry, I know you're busy. Don't worry.
I think the only piece that I will kind of maybe touch upon is also around, and I think most of people know it, is just about connecting the dots together. People talk about eating right and sleeping right, and obviously we're talking about mental wellness, but the physical well-being and the mental well-being at the end of the day are all interlinked together. You can't have a positive mindset till the time you don't have the right physical well-being. You're not taking care of your physical body, and vice versa as well. So exercise on a daily basis, right? I mean, everyone will tell you, and it might sound very cliche, but it is the reality. A bit of an exercise, eating right, not eating too late, again from an Indian eating habits point of view, making sure that you eat early. Everyone will tell you don't binge on Netflix in the night and don't look at the screen. This is true. Learn to leave the Instagram off at least 1 hour before you sleep. And I have still not achieved that. I'm still a bit of that, what is my day tomorrow and what is my diary telling me tomorrow. But that is something which is, I think, the last part of that piece that I want to really work upon is bring those elements of life. I've cut down on my Netflix connection. I'm not watching that much of TV. And that's why, because I cut down on that, I have more time to read a book, to connect with something, to connect to God. Yesterday, I picked up a harmonium and I started playing. I want to learn something new, which I would have never done because I come back home. Oh, my series, season 2, episode 3 is pending. So I need to just switch it on. And once you switch on Netflix, it just goes on and on and on. It never stops. Addiction. It is an addiction. So I think that's the only piece that I'll tell your audience to think about, that physical and mental well-being and all these things that you keep listening and keep reading, they are a very, very important element of your life. You have to embrace them. The sooner you embrace them, you will see a very big positive change in your life.
Yeah. And I would also add the emotional well-being, because emotions are a huge part and we don't know anything. We talk a lot about the mental well-being. We don't talk about emotional well-being, and emotions are huge because they are really, emotions come from our thoughts. And as well, I would say take this with compassion, with patience and self-observation and monitoring, one step at a time. Like cutting everything and started going jogging and doing everything at the same time. The brain is just going to say, nah, that's not going to happen, right? Because we know how difficult it is to do a change as a human being. But patience, compassion, and self-love and embracing yourself is really extremely important, and just start working with that muscle, strengthening it on little tiny steps in there.
Absolutely.
Once again, Taran, thank you so very much.
Thank you for having me.
Not quite sure when is this going to go out. We will talk about that afterwards, but I'm very excited. Please let us know what you think about this as well. For those of you who listen and who feel that would like to connect, would like to have a coach, maybe to give you a free session. I'm here to very happy to give you a free session without any commitments. If you just want to take a little bit of time for yourself, reach out and send us any questions that you had, or send any comments wherever you're listening to this. Taran, thank you so very much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Kela. Thank you. Have a good day. Thank you. Bye-bye.